My name is Renly, I'm 28, and I thought I knew my family until that anniversary dinner, when my sister Paisley raised her champagne glass with that twisted smile and said, "Here's to the family. And all the secrets we keep." I felt my world tilt. The way she looked directly at me while our parents beamed with pride made my stomach drop. What I discovered that night about blood loyalty and the lies we tell ourselves would destroy everything I believed about the people who raised me, setting off a chain of events that would expose decades of manipulation and ultimately serve justice in ways I never imagined possible. Before we dive into this wild ride of family betrayal and sweet revenge, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? If you're ready for a story that'll make you question everything about family loyalty, hit that like button and subscribe, because this tale of uncovered secrets and satisfying payback is about to get intense. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Growing up, the Harrington family was the epitome of suburban perfection. My parents, Margaret and William, had been married for 32 years, and everyone in our Connecticut neighborhood looked up to them. Dad was a successful investment banker, Mom was the queen of charity galas, and my sister Paisley and I were their shining achievements. At least that's what everyone believed. Paisley, 3 years older than me, had always been the golden child. Valedictorian, Harvard MBA, successful marketing executive. She could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, chose a different path. After college, I became a freelance graphic designer, which my parents tolerated but never truly celebrated. Renly's artistic phase, they'd say, with forced smiles at dinner parties. The anniversary dinner was supposed to be a celebration of their enduring love. 32 years of marriage deserved recognition, and Paisley had insisted on hosting it at Chez Laurent, the most exclusive restaurant in town. She'd flown in from Boston specifically for this occasion, something that always made our parents glow with pride. "Paisley is so thoughtful," Mom would gush. "She's incredibly busy, but family always comes first." As we sat around the intimate table surrounded by flickering candles and the soft murmur of other diners, everything seemed picture perfect. Dad regaled us with stories of how he'd met Mom at a college mixer, their eyes meeting across a crowded room, like something out of a romantic movie. Mom blushed appropriately, touching his hand with the same affection I'd witnessed throughout my childhood. But something felt off that evening. Paisley kept checking her phone, a behavior that was unusual for her during family gatherings. She'd always been the one to criticize others for being glued to their devices. "Put that away, Renly," she'd say whenever I checked mine. "Family time is sacred." Yet there she was, smiling mysteriously at her screen every few minutes. When the waiter brought our main courses, Mom launched into her usual speech about gratitude and family bonds. "We're so blessed to have 2 wonderful daughters," she said, her voice warm with emotion. "Paisley with her incredible success, and Renly with her creative spirit. You girls are our greatest achievement." That's when Paisley set down her fork and reached for her champagne glass. The gesture seemed casual enough, but there was something deliberate about it that made me pay attention. Her eyes swept around the table, lingering on each of our faces before settling on mine. The smile that played at her lips wasn't the warm, sisterly expression I was used to seeing. "I have something special to say tonight," she announced, her voice carrying an odd undertone that made Dad straighten in his chair. "A toast that's been a long time coming." She paused dramatically, letting the anticipation build. "Here's to the family, and all the secrets we keep." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Mom's face went pale and Dad's jovial expression faltered for just a moment before he forced out a laugh. "Secrets? What secrets? We're an open book, sweetheart." But Paisley's smile only widened. "Are we, Dad? Are we really?" She pulled out her phone and placed it on the table, the screen facing up. "Because I think it's time we stopped pretending and started being honest about who we really are." The temperature at our table seemed to drop 10 degrees. I looked between my parents and sister, trying to understand the sudden shift in atmosphere. Mom's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine glass, and Dad's jaw tightened in a way I'd never seen before. "Paisley, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. But even as the words left my mouth, I had a sinking feeling that I didn't want to know the answer. Paisley's fingers danced across her phone screen with practiced precision, and suddenly I understood why she'd been so focused on it all evening. She wasn't being rude or distracted, she'd been preparing for this moment. The careful way she angled the device so only I could see the screen made my blood run cold. "You see, Renly," she began, her voice taking on the condescending tone she'd perfected in boardrooms while you've been playing with your little art projects, "I've been doing some real investigating. Did you know that private investigators are incredibly efficient these days? Especially when you give them 30 years worth of suspicious behavior to work with?" The first image that appeared on her screen was a bank statement. Even from my angle across the table, I could see it wasn't from Dad's regular investment firm. The account name read W. Harrington, with transactions dating back decades. Large deposits, always in cash, always on dates that coincided with family vacations or major purchases. "William," Mom whispered, her face now ashen. "You said you closed that account." Dad's composure cracked completely. "Margaret, not here. Not now." But Paisley was just getting started. She swiped to the next image, a photograph of Dad entering a building I didn't recognize, time-stamped just 3 months ago. Then another photo, this one showing him shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit outside what looked like a warehouse. "Tony Salvatore," Paisley announced casually as if she were discussing the weather. "Lovely man. We had quite the conversation last week about his long-standing business relationship with our dear father. Turns out Dad's been laundering money for the Salvatore family for the better part of 3 decades. The restaurant seemed to fade away around us. The clinking of silverware, the soft jazz music, the murmur of other diners, it all became white noise as my sister's words sank in. My father, the man who'd taught me about integrity and honest work, was a criminal." "That's impossible," I breathed, but even as I said it, pieces of a puzzle I'd never realized existed began falling into place. The unexplained expensive gifts that appeared randomly throughout our childhood. The way Dad always paid for things in cash. The mysterious phone calls he'd take in his study with the door locked. The family trips to locations that seemed oddly specific and never quite matched the tourist destinations other families chose. Mom wasn't denying it. Instead, she was staring at her hands, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "We were young," she whispered. "We needed the money. Your father's legitimate salary wasn't enough for the life we wanted to give you girls." "The life you wanted to live," Paisley corrected sharply. "Don't pretend this was about us. This was about maintaining your precious reputation, your perfect house, your designer clothes, your charity events funded by blood money." Dad finally found his voice, though it came out as a harsh whisper. "How long have you known?" "About 6 months," Paisley replied, leaning back in her chair with satisfaction. "Amazing what you can uncover when you actually pay attention." "Did you think I was stupid? That I wouldn't notice the inconsistencies in your stories? The way you'd disappear for hours with no explanation? The fact that our family's lifestyle never quite matched your reported income?" She swiped to another image. This one, a document that made my stomach lurch. It was a birth certificate, but not one I recognized. The name read Renly Santos, not Renly Harrington. The parents listed were Maria Santos and an unknown father. "And then there's this little gem," Paisley continued, her eyes locked on mine. "Renly, meet your real birth certificate." Turns out our perfect parents have been lying about more than just Dad's career choice. The world started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table, struggling to process what I was seeing. What does this mean? It means you're not their biological daughter, Paisley said with false sweetness. It means they adopted you when you were 6 months old from a teenage mother who couldn't afford to keep you. It means every story they've told you about being born into this family, every anniversary of your supposed birth, every family resemblance they've pointed out, all lies. Mom was openly crying now, but I couldn't find any sympathy for her. The betrayal cut too deep, too completely. Is this true? I asked, my voice breaking. Dad nodded slowly, defeat written across his features. We were going to tell you when you were older, but then time just passed and it became easier to pretend. Easier for who I demanded anger, beginning to replace shock. Easier for you. Do you have any idea what this does to a person? To find out at 28 that their entire identity is built on lies. The revelation about my adoption was devastating, but Paisley wasn't finished dismantling our family's foundation. As other diners continued their pleasant conversations around us, oblivious to the implosion happening at our table, she pulled up what appeared to be a series of email screenshots. Now this is where things get really interesting, she said, her voice dripping with vindictive satisfaction. Because the adoption wasn't just about wanting another child, was it, Mom? It was about covering up an even bigger lie. The emails were between Mom and someone named Dr. Patricia Ellsworth, dated from 28 years ago. As I read the visible portions, my blood turned to ice. Terms like confidential procedure, fertility complications, and reputation protection jumped out at me. You see, Renly Paisley continued, our dear mother couldn't have children after me. A botched procedure when I was 2 left her unable to conceive again. But rather than face the social stigma in their precious social circle, they decided to adopt and pretend you were their biological child. Mom's sobs grew louder, drawing concerned glances from nearby tables. Dad kept trying to shush her, more worried about causing a scene than addressing the magnitude of their deception. But here's the truly sick part, Paisley pressed on relentlessly. They didn't just lie to you about being adopted. They lied about your birth mother too. Maria Santos wasn't some irresponsible teenager who couldn't care for you. She was Dad's secretary, and he got her pregnant during one of his business trips. The restaurant suddenly felt suffocating. I pushed back from the table, nearly knocking over my chair. You're lying. You have to be lying. Am I? Paisley held up another document, a DNA test result showing a familial match between William Harrington and me. This is why I look nothing like you, Renly. We're half-sisters, not full sisters. Dad knocked up his secretary, and when she died in a car accident when you were 6 months old, they saw an opportunity to solve multiple problems at once. I know this is a lot to process. Trust me, I'm living it. But if you think this family's web of lies is complicated now, just wait until you see what I discovered next. Make sure you're subscribed, because this revenge story is about to take a turn that even I didn't see coming. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. My entire existence had been a cover-up for my father's infidelity and my mother's inability to conceive. I wasn't just adopted, I was the living evidence of Dad's affair, hidden in plain sight and raised as their own to maintain their perfect family image. Maria Santos, I repeated the name, tasting its unfamiliarity on my tongue. My real mother. Your only biological mother, Paisley corrected. And she didn't abandon you or give you up by choice. She died because she was driving to meet Dad for what she thought was going to be a discussion about their future together. Instead, she was going to be told that he was staying with his wife and that she needed to disappear. Dad finally spoke, his voice hollow. The accident wasn't. We never meant for her to die. But you didn't mind benefiting from it, Paisley shot back. How convenient that the problem solved itself. No messy custody battles, no awkward explanations to your social circle. just a grieving widower suddenly appearing with a baby ready to be welcomed into the perfect Harrington family. I felt sick. Everything I'd believed about my identity, my place in this family, my very existence was built on lies and tragedy. "Did you ever love me?" I asked Mom, my voice barely audible. She looked up through her tears, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Of course we love you. You're our daughter in every way that matters." "Except for all the ways that actually matter," I replied bitterly. "Like honesty. Like truth. Like giving me the choice to know who I really am." The waiter approached tentatively, clearly sensing the tension at our table. Dad waved him away with a sharp gesture, but not before several other diners had turned to stare at us. The perfect anniversary dinner was turning into a public spectacle. "There's more," Paisley said, ignoring the growing attention we were attracting. "Because once I started digging, I couldn't stop. Did you know that the money Dad's been laundering, some of it went into a trust fund? A trust fund that was supposed to be for Maria Santos's child, for you, but that they've been using for their own expenses for years." She showed me another document, this one from a law office. A trust established by someone named Eduardo Santos, apparently Maria's father, my biological grandfather, who had died 5 years ago. The trust contained over $2 million, money that should have come to me when I turned 25, but that had been systematically drained by my adoptive parents. "Your real family tried to provide for you," Paisley explained. "Even after Maria died, her father made sure you'd be taken care of. But our parents' forged documents claim the money was for child-rearing expenses and spent it on maintaining their lifestyle." The anger that had been building inside me finally erupted. "You stole from me. You stole my identity, my heritage, my family's money, everything that was rightfully mine." "We gave you a good life," Dad protested weakly. "A better life than you would have had. A life built on lies." I stood up so forcefully that my chair fell backward with a crash. The entire restaurant was staring now, but I was beyond caring. "You robbed me of knowing my real family. You spent money that was meant for me. You built your perfect life on the grave of my mother." Mom reached for me desperately. "Renly, please. We can work through this. We're still a family." I stepped away from her grasping hands. "We were never a family. I was just a convenient solution to your problems." I turned to Paisley, my emotions a mixture of gratitude and confusion. "Why? Why tell me all this now?" Her smile was cold and calculating. "Because, dear sister, it's time for justice, and I'm going to help you get everything that was stolen from you." The ride home from the restaurant was silent except for the hum of Paisley's rental car engine and the occasional sniffle from me as I tried to process the magnitude of what I'd learned. She'd insisted on driving me home, claiming we needed to talk privately away from our parents' desperate attempts at damage control. When we reached my apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a converted Victorian house, Paisley followed me inside without invitation. She looked around at my thrift store furniture and art supplies scattered across every surface with the same analytical gaze she'd used to dissect our family's lies. "Nice place," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Very bohemian." "Get to the point, Paisley," I said, pouring myself a large glass of wine with shaking hands. "Why did you really do this tonight? And don't tell me it was about justice or helping me. You've never cared about my well-being before." She settled onto my second-hand couch, looking oddly out of place in her designer dress among my eclectic decor. "You're right. This isn't entirely altruistic." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. 6 months ago, when I first started investigating Dad's activities, it wasn't because I suspected money laundering. I was trying to figure out why my trust fund was smaller than expected. Of course, even her moment of apparent sisterly support was ultimately self-serving. I discovered that they'd been siphoning money from my college fund to cover their lifestyle expenses, she continued. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that our entire family fortune is built on criminal activity and lies. Do you understand what that means for my career, my reputation? Your reputation, I repeated flatly. Your sister just found out her entire life is a lie, and you're worried about your reputation. Our reputations, she corrected. Because whether you like it or not, we're both Harringtons in the eyes of the world. When this all comes out, and it will come out, we'll both be painted with the same brush, unless we control the narrative. I sank into my reading chair, suddenly exhausted. What are you proposing, Paisley? Opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I've been working with a team of lawyers and investigators for months. We can expose everything, the money laundering, the trust fund theft, the adoption fraud, but we need to be strategic about it. Adoption fraud. They falsified documents when they adopted you, claiming you were abandoned rather than the child of Dad's deceased mistress. That's felony fraud. Combined with the money laundering and trust fund theft, we're looking at serious prison time for both of them. The idea of my parents, the people who'd raised me flawed as they were, going to prison made my stomach churn. But then I thought about Maria Santos, my biological mother, dying on her way to what she thought was a hopeful meeting about her future. I thought about 28 years of lies, of being denied knowledge of my real heritage, of money stolen from me by the very people who were supposed to protect me. What's your plan? I asked. We give them a choice, Paisley said, her business school training evident in her methodical approach. They can cooperate with a controlled exposure, confess everything, return the stolen money, and accept consequences on our terms. Or we can let the authorities handle it and watch everything burn down around them. She opened the folder and spread documents across my coffee table. Bank records, legal documents, photographs, email printouts. Months of investigation laid out like a prosecutor's case file. This is everything, she explained. Enough evidence to put Dad away for 15 to 20 years, Mom for 5 to 10. But if they cooperate, if they help us recover your trust fund and provide full restitution, we might be able to arrange plea deals that keep them out of federal prison. I studied the documents, overwhelmed by the scope of their deception. And what do you get out of this? Distance, she said simply. I've already changed my name legally. I'm Paisley Morrison now, using Mom's maiden name. I've been quietly disentangling myself from any financial connections to them for months. When this breaks, I'll be the dutiful daughter who discovered her parents' crimes and did the right thing by reporting them. The cynicism of it was breathtaking, but I had to admit it was also brilliant. Paisley had positioned herself to emerge from this scandal not just unscathed but potentially enhanced in reputation as someone who chose justice over family loyalty. You've thought of everything I said. I've tried to, but there's one variable I couldn't account for. She looked at me intently. What you want to do with this information, because ultimately you're the primary victim here. Your cooperation is crucial, but I can't force you to seek justice if you'd rather maintain the status quo. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. These people had lied to me my entire life, stolen from me, built their perfect existence on the foundation of my mother's death. But they'd also raised me, loved me in their imperfect way, given me opportunities and advantages I might not have had otherwise. If we do this, I said slowly, if we expose everything, what happens to the money? To my trust fund? Eduardo Santos was a wealthy man. Your grandfather owned several successful restaurants in California before he died. The trust he established for you is substantial even after their theft. With interest and penalties, we're looking at recovering close to $3 million. $3 million. Money that could have paid for art school, could have funded my design business, could have given me the security to take creative risks without worrying about rent. Money that belonged to me from a grandfather I'd never known existed. And my mother, Maria Santos. What can you tell me about her? Paisley's expression softened slightly. The first crack in her corporate armor I'd seen all evening. She was 22 when she died. Graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in literature. She worked as Dad's secretary, but she was writing a novel in her spare time. She was planning to quit her job when you were born and focus on writing while raising you. The image of a young woman with dreams and ambitions cut short by my father's selfishness made tears spring to my eyes again. Do I have other family? Besides my grandfather, Eduardo had a sister, your great-aunt Carmen. She's 78 and lives in San Diego. She's been looking for you for years, Renly. When Eduardo died, she hired investigators to try to track down Maria's child, but our parents covered their tracks well. Family. Real family who'd been searching for me while I lived with the people who'd stolen me from them. She knows about me. She knows about Maria's baby who disappeared into the system. She doesn't know you're alive and well and living in Connecticut under an assumed name. Paisley pulled out one more document, a handwritten letter. Eduardo left this for you to be given to you when you turned 25. The lawyers have been holding it, waiting to find you. With trembling hands I took the letter. The envelope was yellowed with age, addressed to me, Querida Nieta, my dear granddaughter. Inside, written in careful English with a few Spanish phrases mixed in, was a love letter from a grandfather I'd never met to a granddaughter he'd never known. My dearest Renly, it began. If you are reading this, it means that somehow you have found your way back to your true family. I couldn't read any further through my tears, but I didn't need to. The decision was made. Let's do it, I said, my voice steady despite my tears. Let's make them pay for what they've done. 3 days later, Paisley and I sat in the living room of my childhood home, surrounded by the artifacts of our fabricated family life. The mahogany furniture Dad had claimed was a family heirloom, the expensive artwork Mom insisted represented our refined taste, the photographs chronicling birthday parties and graduations and holidays, all of it now felt like evidence. In a museum of lies. Mom and Dad sat across from us on the couch where they'd read me bedtime stories, their faces aged a decade in the past 72 hours. Dad's usually perfect hair was disheveled, and Mom's hands shook as she clutched a tissue box that was nearly empty. We've had our attorneys review everything, Paisley announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years commanding boardrooms. The evidence is comprehensive and irrefutable. Money laundering, adoption fraud, trust fund theft, identity falsification. We're looking at multiple felony charges. She placed a thick legal document on the coffee table between us. This is your choice. You can sign this agreement, which includes full confession, complete financial restitution, and cooperation with authorities in exchange for reduced sentences. Or we can let the district attorney handle it without any input from us. Dad picked up the document with trembling hands. Renly, sweetheart, please understand. Don't call me sweetheart, I interrupted, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Don't call me anything that implies intimacy or love. You've lost that right. The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. Paisley had arranged for me to speak with Carmen Santos, my great-aunt, through a video call that had left both of us sobbing. Carmen looked exactly like the photos I'd seen of Maria, my mother, and she'd spent an hour showing me pictures and telling me stories about the family I'd never known I had. Your mother was so excited when she found out she was pregnant, Carmen had said, her accent lending warmth to every word. She called me every day talking about names and nursery colors and how she was going to write children's books for you. She loved you so much, mija. So much. Learning about Maria's dreams, her excitement about motherhood, her plans for our future together had crystallized my resolve. These people hadn't just stolen money from me, they'd stolen my entire heritage, my connection to a family who'd loved me sight unseen. The financial terms are non-negotiable. Paisley continued, consulting her notes with professional detachment. Full restitution of the trust fund with accrued interest, $3.2 million. Additional damages for emotional trauma and lost opportunities, $500,000. Legal fees and investigation costs, $150,000. Total $3.85 million. Mom gasped at the figure. We don't have that kind of money. Yes, you do, I said quietly. You have this house which is worth about $800,000. Dad's legitimate retirement accounts, Mom's jewelry collection, the art you've collected over the years. You'll liquidate everything and downsize dramatically, but you'll survive. And if we refuse, Dad asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer, then you'll face federal charges without the benefit of plea negotiations, Paisley replied, matter-of-factly. Money laundering alone carries a 20-year maximum sentence. Add in the fraud charges and you're looking at spending the rest of your lives in prison. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock Dad had always been so proud of. I wondered if that was stolen too, paid for with blood money from his criminal associations. There's something else, I said, pulling out a document I'd prepared with my own attorney. A statement that will be released to your social circle, your business associates, and the local media. It explains exactly what happened and why. Your reputations will be destroyed, but that's a natural consequence of your choices. Mom looked up in horror. The country club, the charity boards, they'll expel me from everything. Good, I replied, without sympathy. You built those relationships on a foundation of lies and stolen money. You don't deserve them. Dad was reading through the confession document, his face growing paler with each page. This level of detail, it will ruin us completely. You ruined yourselves, Paisley pointed out. We're just making sure the truth comes to light. The alternative is much worse. What about forgiveness? Mom asked desperately. What about family? We raised you, Renly. We loved you. Doesn't that count for anything? The question hung in the air, and for a moment I felt the old familiar tug of obligation and affection. These people had attended my school plays, celebrated my birthdays, comforted me when I was sick. But then I thought about Maria Santos dying alone in a car accident while on her way to fight for her daughter's future. You want to talk about family? I asked, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. My real family spent years looking for me. My grandfather died without ever knowing if I was safe or loved or even alive. My great-aunt has been grieving the loss of her sister's child for nearly 3 decades, never knowing that I was right here being raised by the people who caused my mother's death. We didn't cause. Dad started to protest. You absolutely did, I cut him off. If you hadn't been having an affair, if you hadn't gotten her pregnant, if you hadn't summoned her to that meeting where you planned to abandon her and your child, she would still be alive. Everything that happened afterward was a consequence of your choices. The weight of accountability settled over him like a shroud. For the first time since this all began, he looked genuinely remorseful rather than just scared of consequences. We have 48 hours to decide, Paisley announced, gathering her documents. After that, the offer expires and we proceed with full prosecution. As we prepared to leave, Mom made one last desperate plea. Renly, please. We may not be your biological parents, but we are the only parents you've ever known. Doesn't that bond mean anything to you? I paused at the door, looking back at the woman who'd raised me. It did mean something. It meant everything. That's what makes this betrayal so devastating. You had my complete trust and love, and you built it all on lies. You could have told me the truth at any time, but you chose deception. You could have honored my mother's memory, but you chose to erase her. You could have protected my inheritance, but you chose to steal it. Every choice you made prioritized your comfort over my well-being. I opened the door, then turned back one final time. The bond between us wasn't destroyed by my learning the truth. It was destroyed the moment you decided that protecting your perfect life was more important than protecting the child you claimed to love. 6 months later, I stood in the garden of Carmen's house in San Diego, surrounded by the family I'd never known I had. The afternoon sun cast golden light over the gathering. Cousins, second cousins, family friends who remembered Maria and had been waiting years to meet her daughter. Carmen had organized what she called a celebration of return, complete with traditional Mexican dishes and stories that painted a vivid picture of the heritage I'd been denied. "Your mother would be so proud," Carmen said, squeezing my hand as we watched children play in the backyard. "You have her strength, her artistic spirit. And you chose justice over easy forgiveness. That's very much like her too." The settlement had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. Mom and Dad had signed the confession agreement rather than face federal prosecution, though their cooperation hadn't saved them from significant consequences. Dad received 5 years in federal prison for money laundering while Mom got 18 months for fraud and conspiracy. They'd lost everything. The house, the social status, the respect of their community, but they'd avoided the decades behind bars they would have faced without the plea deal. The trust fund recovery had been more successful than anyone had imagined. Between the original money, accrued interest, and penalties, I'd received nearly $4 million. But more importantly, I'd gained something money couldn't buy: connection to my real family and knowledge of who I truly was. Paisley had emerged from the scandal exactly as she'd planned, with her reputation enhanced rather than tarnished. She'd been featured in business magazines as an example of ethical leadership, someone who'd chosen truth over family loyalty when faced with corruption. Our relationship remained complicated. I appreciated what she'd done but couldn't forget that her motivations had been largely self-serving. "I've been thinking about your mother's unfinished novel," Carmen said, interrupting my thoughts. "The manuscripts are in storage with her other belongings. Perhaps you'd like to read them." "I'd love that," I replied, feeling a connection to Maria that transcended death. "And I've been thinking about finishing it, if that would be appropriate." Carmen's eyes filled with tears. "She would love that so much, Mija. She always said her greatest dream was to leave something beautiful behind for her daughter." The financial settlement had allowed me to make changes I'd never thought possible. I'd established a scholarship fund for children of single mothers, started a nonprofit to help adoptees find their biological families, and launched a design studio specializing in work for social justice organizations. But perhaps most importantly, I'd found peace with my identity. "Have you heard from them recently?" Carmen asked, gently referring to the people who'd raised me. "Mom writes sometimes," I admitted, "from prison. Apology letters mostly. Asking for forgiveness I'm not ready to give." I paused, watching a young cousin chase butterflies across the lawn. "I don't hate them anymore, but I don't trust them either." "Trust has to be rebuilt, and they haven't done the work yet." Dad hadn't contacted me at all since the sentencing. According to Paisley, he was struggling more with prison life than Mom was, though she seemed to be finding some genuine remorse in her forced solitude. Whether that remorse would translate into meaningful change remained to be seen. "Forgiveness is a process, not a destination," Carmen said wisely. "You'll know when and if you're ready. But don't let their need for absolution pressure you into rushing your healing." As the afternoon wound down and extended family began to say their goodbyes, I felt a sense of completeness I'd never experienced before. This was what belonging actually felt like. Not the performance of family unity I'd grown up with, but genuine connection based on truth and shared history. The drive back to my hotel gave me time to reflect on everything that had changed. In 6 months I'd gone from being Renly Harrington's struggling graphic designer living paycheck to paycheck to Renly Santos' business owner with the resources to pursue meaningful work and the family connections I'd always craved without knowing it. But the most important change wasn't financial or even familial, it was the relationship I'd developed with truth itself. Growing up in a household built on lies had made me suspicious of my own perceptions, always second-guessing whether what I was seeing and feeling was real. Now, surrounded by people who valued honesty, even when it was uncomfortable, I was learning to trust myself again. That evening, I video called Paisley from my hotel room. She was in her Boston office despite the late hour, reviewing quarterly reports with her typical intensity. "How was the family gathering?" she asked, though her tone suggested polite interest rather than genuine curiosity. "Healing," I replied simply. "These people have been mourning Maria for 30 years and meeting me has given them a sense of closure they didn't even know they needed." "That's nice," she said, though I could tell she was distracted by something on her computer screen. "Listen, I've been thinking about our next steps. With your settlement money and my business connections, we could really build something substantial." "I have some investment opportunities that—" Paisley, I interrupted gently. "I appreciate everything you did to help expose the truth, I really do, but I'm not interested in being your business partner or investment opportunity." She looked genuinely surprised. "Why not? We make a good team. We could be incredibly successful together." "Because success for you means something different than success for me," I explained. "You saved me because it served your interests too. There's nothing wrong with that, it worked out well for both of us. But I need relationships built on something more than mutual benefit." For a moment her professional mask slipped and I saw something that might have been hurt in her expression. "So what, we just go back to being strangers?" "We don't have to be strangers," I said carefully. "But we need to build a new relationship based on who we actually are, not the roles we played in our parents' dysfunction. And that's going to take time." After we ended the call, I opened my laptop and began writing. Not a business plan or investment proposal, but a letter to Maria Santos, the mother I'd never known but was finally beginning to understand. I told her about discovering the truth about meeting Carmen and our extended family, about the scholarship fund established in her memory. I told her about her unfinished novel and my plans to complete it. Most importantly, I told her that I finally understood what family really meant. You know, when this all started with that anniversary dinner toast, I thought my world was ending. But looking back now, it was actually beginning. Sometimes the most devastating revelations are also the most liberating ones. Family isn't just about blood, it's about truth, respect, and genuine love. My biological family spent decades looking for me while my adoptive family spent decades lying to me. The difference is everything. So, I want to ask you, have you ever discovered a truth that completely changed your understanding of your life? How did you handle it? And what do you think? Was justice served in my case, or should I have been more forgiving? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I genuinely want to hear your perspectives on family loyalty versus personal truth. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life drama and justice stories. Share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose truth over comfortable lies. And remember, sometimes the family that searches for you is more valuable than the family that hides from you. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that you deserve relationships built on honesty and respect. Your truth matters, your heritage matters, and you deserve to know who you really are. Until next time, keep fighting for your authentic self.